welcome back. We're in our second hour. The first hour, for those of you who were not here, we had 4 OEMs and they were talking about code scanning and when and why, why the need of code scanning, what's happening in the vehicles, etc. Some of you asked questions about tooling, some of you asked questions about availability in the aftermarket. So you were all very pressing, forward-looking, because we decided, well, we're going to bring the aftermarket up, we're going to bring the independents up, and we're going to spend the next hour talking about, you heard what to do, when to do it, and why to do it, and maybe even where to do it. What you missed, though, is the fifth W, or the 5 W's plus H, is the how to do it. So this hour is going to be talking about the how. How to do it, how to get access to it, best practices, etc. And with that same comment as before, in fact, with most of the exception, with the exception of Chuck, I've only just met these gentlemen this morning. We did have a conversation just like I did with the OEMs. We all talked about each other. We figured out what was on topic and off topic from broad spectrum. But it's meant to be another bar. If you can picture yourself, we're at the New York with the Fidel bar sitting out there. I got a Guinness in front of me. These gentlemen all have Guinnesses in front of them. And we're going to spend an hour talking to you about the things that you all have available to you through the aftermarket as independent repairers to do the things that the OEMs talked about. So with that, I'll give you a warm welcome. I'm going to go quickly through by name because I want to make sure we get all the questions that we're going to be getting here shortly. But to my immediate right, I have Chuck Olson. I have, Jason Gabrinas from ICAR. No, sorry, the other way. Jason Barton from ICAR. I apologize. Doug Kelly from CDS. Bob Batnier from Bosch, and Jason Gabrinas from Snap-on. Two Jasons, Jason G, Jason B. Again, please ask questions. We're going to start dialoguing here quickly. But with that said, I just introduced your names. Tell us a little bit who you are, your role in the industry, your company. This is not a sales pitch, but what you do, and then we'll start our conversation about the how.
Okay, yeah, I'm Chuck Olson. I've been in the mechanical side of the business for the majority of my career in diagnostics and assessing vehicles and doing training on diagnostic process and mechanical. It's in collision is still kind of new for me. I've been involved for about the last 5 years with the diagnostic process and the need for the diagnostic process. And learning the rest of the different manufacturers, the difference from all the manufacturers, as my primary background was GM, but very pleased to be working in this area of the collision.
Excellent. Mr. B.
Jason Barton, Director of Industry Technical Relations for ICAR at our ICAR Tech Center in Appleton, Wisconsin, and part of the ICAR Repairability Technical Support Team, RTS. We're offering vehicle-specific information, putting the industry in touch with vehicle manufacturers, tool equipment manufacturers, and try to share as much information as possible, try to bridge gaps where gaps exist. And we've been doing a lot of work on collision repair diagnostics lately. We're going to get into and talk a little bit about some of the tools that we've been working on.
And for those that don't know, because there are some folks here that were new into the industry, what is ICAR?
ICAR is an inter-industry conference on auto collision repair, not-for-profit education training solutions organization, with our vision being that every person in the industry has the information, knowledge, and skills to complete safe, quality repairs for the ultimate benefit of the consumer.
Excellent. Okay. Doug.
Good morning. Doug Kelly, CEO of Collision Diagnostic Services. We make a product called the Aztec. I've been in the industry 30 years. Started my career with DuPont in their automotive coatings division. Then I ran the fixed auto collision group here in the United States for 5 years. Started a company called Syncast. Grew that, sold it to Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I was with Enterprise for 4 years. And then I joined CDS as their CEO when the company was purchased in July of 2015.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Bob.
Bob Pattingale, training manager for Bosch. My dad spent 42 years at a Dodge dealership in Tucson, Arizona. So with our time I was old enough to run around and tinker with cars, that's where I've had my passion. I spent the first 6 years with Bosch in the field with shop owners every day trying to make decisions on diagnostic equipment. How do they solve their technician issues? And as a training manager for Bosch, that's what I do today, is work with shop owners, both our authorized network and our diesel network, to help them determine, what are the next steps in the process for them.
Excellent. Jason.
And I'm Jason Gabrinas. I've been with Snap-on for about 5 years now. Been the National Diagnostics Trainer, so I train both end user folks like yourselves, and I also train internal folks with the companies. Basically, anybody who needs diagnostics training inside or outside the company using Snap-on tool, that's my responsibility. And then Before that, is 8 years at a Subaru dealership, so hard time there. Lots of diagnostic stuff there, and that's where I really cut my diagnostics teeth. And a bunch of other miscellaneous other, I guess you could say aftermarket positions. About 20 years automotive experience for me. So
Excellent. So, as much as we can, we're going to try and stay away from the brand pitching, but it is important for folks to understand what's available and what's in the marketplace. So you all heard what the OEMs had to say, right? I mean, generally speaking, they want cars to be scanned pre and post. There are some exceptions. I don't want to get into that now, but in general, somebody's got to scan a car. So what options do the folks in the audience, and as I said, we're recording, what options do people have to be able to go do that? Where and how does someone figure this out? And again, I'm not the car guy, so if it's all just an obvious answer, y'all can just say it's an obvious answer, we can move on to another question. I got a lot of other questions, but if it's not that obvious, let people know. We'll flip backwards. We'll start with you, Jack.
So really, you're going to need some sort of a scan tool to hook up to the car, right? So we try to make it really easy. I'm really a big proponent of let's make this as easy for the end user as possible to help them figure it out. So we try to give as much information as possible. One button scans the whole car, 06 and newer, pretty much all of them on just about all of our tools. And then it gives you a nice little printout you can give and hand out to either your customer who owns the car, or you can hand it to the insurance company, PDF, what have you. And there's all sorts of different varieties, different price ranges. Of course, we're not going to talk about price, but there's many varieties of tools that you can do to scan that. And definitely you do need to be doing that pre and post scan as the manufacturer said too. So.
Yeah, and it really comes down to one of two decisions. You're going to buy an aftermarket solution of some type, or as the panelists before talked about, as an OE solution. And it really comes down to a shop owner deciding, is there a specialty that they work on that would lean them towards an OE tool? So if you made a decision in the collision industry that you're going to work on primarily an Asian brand vehicle or European vehicles, you may decide to have an OE tool to help you through that process. But typically, the majority of aftermarket tools that are out there, depending upon, what level you get into, you'll have the ability to push a button, have it scan through the modules, and then, hit a button to print those trouble codes out from those variety of modules that are on the vehicle.
Excellent.
Our company's a little bit different. We actually don't sell a scan tool. So in our organization, we actually sell a device that connects to a scan tool. But the more important aspect of what we really do is connect to trained technicians. You look at today's cars and the complexity associated with it, and I know a lot of the tools that are up here. We've used many of them, and they're good tools. The challenge you have, though, of course, is who's operating it, and do they know what they're touching? And even if I give the information, then what? And so we offer a service, and we have done side-by-side comparisons, and I'm not going to disparage anybody's product or offering, but there are differences. And I would just encourage folks to really research the subject, understand it, and make the informed decision. I think, for some makes and manufacturers, some tools might be better. But the OEs, as was discussed earlier, they're doing weekly updates. And to keep up with the 17s and the 16s with all this new technology, I honestly wouldn't know where a repair shop would start if they weren't using those factory tools.
John?
At iCar, we get a lot of questions going, what scan tool should I purchase? What should I be looking for a scan tool? And I think to Bob's point, it's not a simple, it's just as simple as that. It's taking a look at what vehicles are you working on. Let's pull the ROs for the last couple of years, look at make, model, year vehicles. Again, are you working on a high percentage of a particular brand? Perhaps you might want to invest in that particular tool. And then working with, if you're looking for the aftermarket road, making sure that again that equipment has the capabilities that you can to do what you need to do, pre-scan, post-scanning, and certainly the post-repair calibration. And then certainly the training aspect and having that technician having it in their hands. The tool's only as good as that person. The training is going to be critical to make sure that they understand the vehicle systems, that they understand how to use that piece of equipment. That's the only way that we can really ensure a complete safe and quality repairs. Again, trained technician, educated technician, and then tools that are capable of doing the job.
Starts with the scanning, ends with the calibration, and then scan it after.
Yes.
Yeah, it's we've kind of got a hybrid model of it. And AirPro, we do have a scan tool, and it's a very high-level scan tool. And at the same time, we take advantage of the J2534 availability of the OEM scan tools, and it's all put together in one package. So we could step up at different levels for the scanning and the technicians. And at the same time, there's different options, and each option does have unique consequences for a shop approach. And it depends on the personnel, what you're working on, kind of what you guys were talking about before. If you're a single line, a OEM scan tool, that single line might be your best option, but at the same time, you have the personnel to operate it. So we do in conjunction with the scan tool and the scan tool software, we have the service that goes along with it. So it's we've got the trained technicians that understand diagnostics, have been doing it for years, are familiar with the different platforms from each different OEM, which can be a challenge in a shop that works on a lot of vehicles. So it's that's our approach, and also with the service information, put the service information together with the scan data, because the scan data doesn't tell you this is what's wrong with the car, points you in the right direction, areas of concern, but that's an important piece.
And then it's, you know, it's not just a scan tool either, so we're talking post-repair calibration. You know, so we aiming targets, you know, you may have to invest in certain targets, again, if you're working on a particular model line vehicle. Toyota's done a great job, I think, making that information available on the website. You can print off a lot of those targets that they've got. Other OEs, you know, offer different aiming masks, whether it's for the adaptive cruise control, the lane keep, lane departure warning systems, or the 360-degree camera, the calibration mask for that as well. So again, it's knowing what you're working on, the types of vehicle you're dealing with, and then preparing yourself appropriately.
So that brings up, it's fascinating, it brings up a synthesis of conversation between yesterday and then on Monday, and even a couple weeks ago having an interceptor session. And I'm going to ask Bob, maybe you to weigh in on this, because you said you started when you were just a young lad. In that time frame, in your dad, in the Dodge dealership you had, they were mechanics. Yet, not once yet on this stage have we ever said the word mechanic, it's technician, which implies something different. So talk to me a little bit about what does it mean to be a collision? I mean, are you wrenching still, or are you a laptop guy? But what does it mean to be a tech? And what are the challenges moving forward as we contemplate, you know, this new future world of repair when it's really a computer on wheels?
Yeah, you know, I think it always comes back to the fundamentals. You know, we always talk about all the cool technology, but it still comes back to electrons flowing through wires. It's hydraulic components, it's fueling components, all the same things that we've known for many, many years. And one of the things I was taught at a very young age is you need to know how it works before you repair it. So anytime you approach a new issue, a new problem, you need to perform the research. You need to know what the systems are in the vehicle. So when you approach it, you've got to take that additional time to determine what are the tools that I need, what's the research that I have to perform. And I can remember some of the older technicians, you know, talking about the fact that oh, we're going from drum brakes to disc brakes. So I'm out of this business, you know. Carburetor and fuel injection, I'm out of this business. You know, if they could see where we are today.
People laughing at me.
Yeah, they can see where we are today, lane departure technology, and all these things that are on a car, and they're wonderful. But really, the skill set really hasn't changed. You need to know how it works. Do your research on the tools and the information, and then perform the task. But I always think of a three-legged stool concept, that you have to have a balanced approach. If you don't have the training, if you don't have the tools, you don't have the service information, in one way or another, you're going to fall over. So you have to figure out which one of those three. If you get into a tough diagnostic problem, and you say, I don't know where to go next, typically a technician has one of those three areas of weakness. And as soon as you identify that, then you can start working towards a solution.
Excellent. Please, folks, remember to ask your questions, write them up, send them up here, please, and we'll keep going. And with the first question, I want to throw it out. I'll let any one of you. Well, no, too. I'm gonna start with Jason, and I'll let you answer this question. But you all can weigh in on it. So the OEs talk about updates, whether it's crib updates or tool updates. They update with a frequency. The question then from the audience was, for the aftermarket, do you update in accordance with OE updates, or what's the lag time, or what's and the question is more along the lines of the evaluation question that you asked, which is, as you evaluate OE versus independent, what are some of the considerations in terms of the update and the frequencies?
I want to say generally, with the vehicle communications software aspect, we do 2 regular updates, at least for our product, every year. So every April and October, we come out with 1 update for the tool. Generally, year, make, model, about 6 months behind because of when the manufacturer gets us the information, and then we have to code it, program, and all that stuff. So it takes a little bit of time. When it comes to the information aspect of it, because we also have the manual repair information under our umbrella, generally we get it as soon as the information is released, we get it, and we usually have it available within 2 weeks of the manufacturer getting it to us. So I always say to what Bob's point was a little earlier is information is what fixes cars. Wrenches don't always fix cars. Information is what fixes a car, right?
The brain fixes.
Gotta have it. And if you don't have the training, you don't have the knowledge, get the trainer, get the knowledge.
Any of you guys want to jump on top of that and augment Jason's answer?
Yeah, it's with the Weasel multifaceted approach and the main software, we get the updates every 6 months. It's on a 6-month cycle. Through the other organizations, ETI, members of ETI, they get the OEM information to work on those updates, but it is about a 6-month cycle. However, with the J2534 functionality, that's the OEM software. So that's the same software, so those updates are available immediately. So it's and it just depends on what it is you're using. So if you've got a base aftermarket system, those updates can be about 6 months behind on a vehicle. But they've gotten much better over the years. People are getting better at computers, getting better at diagnostics, and they're getting right on top of with the latest and greatest.
Either one of you gentlemen want to?
Well, I think we're in a pretty cool time in the industry. The cooperation between the aftermarket and the OE is unprecedented. Now, some of that's driven by some legislation, but the cooperation is pretty amazing. In reality, you can purchase an aftermarket scan tool that can do a lot of what you want it to do. But let's say you get that late model car in, and you just don't have the feature in your scan tool. Well, if you have a J2534 device, you go to a website, you download the diagnostic software that you need, because we're not just talking about calibrations, we're not talking about the diagnostic software, the same exact scan tool that the dealer tech uses. You pay a 2-day subscription, a 3-day subscription for under $100. You solve the problem, you put your J-box away, and you move on. I mean, we're in an unprecedented point where I don't have to buy the full scan tool and own it for life. I can pick and choose, when I need an OE scan tool as needed. But if I find I use it a lot, then it may be a good idea to buy that annual subscription to move forward with.
Yeah, I would just add that, I think the future is very exciting, and I think you're right. The OEs have demonstrated up here earlier a real willingness to want to get information out there to help folks. But I think we need to be cautious, even with J2534. Dash 1's been around since 04, that was with emissions. Dash 2, they've agreed to adopt that and support it by 2018. So when we throw it out there, it can be a little bit misleading, and folks think, well, it's there today and I can just take advantage of it. And so I really encourage repairers, I know this might be a little bit too deep for some, but take the time to really ask the hard questions about the tools that you're choosing to use. Is there documentation to prove that they're going to deliver the same functionality? Because at the end of the day, as repairers, you're the ones holding the bag on this. If the tool doesn't perform as designed and you think it did, and there isn't any sort of validation or indemnification for you with that process, you can't really turn to the vendor at that point and say, you sold me something that didn't quite deliver as promised. So our strategy's been draft behind the OEs. If there's a better tool out there, we'd use it. So I'm not a speaker box for the car manufacturers. We're there for the benefit of the repairers doing the job. So if a tool outperforms an OE tool, it performs equal to it, and it's a better value, we'll use the best tool for the job. I just want to make sure people understand that.
So we've been thrown out. I came from the telco industry, and I just thought Motorola had a lot of acronyms that was unbelievable, standards, and throwing them around. But the auto industry has nothing in comparison. It's unbelievable. So one of the questions that it is prompted from this, but it has come up in others, and it was going to be integrated here. I'll ask you, Bob, to start, but all of you are going to have to jump in on this because I think it's going to be a multi-person answer. Briefly, can you tell what is J2530? What is the standard? Where did it come from and why? And sort of where are we historically in the industry with it? And sort of why is it so important? And why is it something that the audience needs to be aware of and sort of keep track of?
Well, the J comes from the SAE, Society of Automotive Engineers, so that's their, letter that says this is a standard. So there's a variety of J standards that are associated with OBD2. So if we really look at the inception of OBD2, and I can't remember all the J numbers because there's so many of them, but the idea of having one connector where every technician can plug into basically J1939. So if you were to go on a Google search and you looked that up, it would end up pointing to the Society of Automotive Engineers, and you could read on, what is that particular standard and what's required. There, in fact, J2534 was brought up a few years after we introduced OBD2 because reprogramming and calibration becomes such a huge issue that there was no standardization. Everybody was doing it different. We said, well, if we're plugging into one 16-pin connector, why can't we take the next step and have a generic way with which to program vehicles? Now, keep in mind, the EPA can only mandate emissions related. And the earlier panel talked about check engine lights, mill light. The engine mill light can only illuminate if the tailpipe is polluting. That's its only job. It can't turn on because there's an ABS problem or another type of system. It's there for the emissions related item. So the evolution of J2534, we're now actually at a J2534-4 and -5 standard, which moves into this 2018 movement towards having that J-box being fully capable of running diagnostic software, not programming emissions related modules, but also moving into 100% authentic usage of the OE tools.
Well, and that brings up a really interesting question that I know you raised, but I'm going to let Doug maybe weigh in on it. And that is, they always talk about in their statements, right? It is, Chris brought up. There's 510, I think he said, DTCs on the lowest end model of the latest model for Honda, for whatever percentage was. And I think John talked about there being about 1,000 DTCs, in which 13 of them actually lit the dashboard. And one of the questions that's coming from the audience is, so they always make the comment, you need to scan because of that. The question that comes from the audience is, what and how do they know the completeness comparison between your aftermarket tool and an OE tool? So assumptively, the OE tool will scan all and report all. How do they know the difference? And if there is a difference, and is that difference clearly stated? And how do they do the research to understand the comparative contrast? You might start that, Doug, and then we'll let everyone else weigh in on that.
Yeah, so we have a little bit of an advantage in the sense that we purchase obviously the OE tools and we purchase the aftermarket tools. And we test them in our lab to rule in or rule out, what the differences may or may not be. And the challenge we have in a collision is compounded by the fact that the cars you're touching typically are not in a whole state. So, you have to literally have the same circumstances take place. If you're going to do a side-by-side evaluation, it has to be in the same car with the same set of circumstances, and you have to, put it all through its paces. It takes a lot of time and effort. And there are differences. I mean, I'd love to say that they all perform the same or as good as, but the OEs have some key differences. And the other thing we maybe miss sometimes is, although the programming information might be available to the aftermarkets, the OEs still have unique aspects to those tools, like the build data, for instance, which isn't required to be given out. So, knowing what's on that car is equally as important as knowing what to look for when you have the car. So again, I kind of sound like I'm promoting the OE tools, but I'm really just trying to educate the audience as to what to look for when you're making that decision. And there may be time for use aftermarkets for certain ages of vehicles or certain types of vehicles, and then you augment it with the OEM tools, or maybe you use a service. But I guess I'm just trying to help the market understand, ask the right questions, dig into this, because it's really, really important.
One tool is not going to cover every single possibility on every single car that's out there. It's damn near impossible to cover every single possible option on there. So you want to just try and find, at least through your research, maybe you're not going to have just one tool. Maybe you do need a couple tools just to fill some gaps that might be here, there, and everywhere. I know we at least publish what we cover on every single vehicle that we cover. So all the modules are listed, and it's all on the chart. It's a pretty thick book, but very small print too. So there's a lot of stuff that's covered. But I'm not going to go out there and say that we cover 100% of 100% of the cars, because it's almost impossible. we get the information from the manufacturer, we put it in there as fast as we can, and we'll at least get codes and data on the module to start, and then maybe extra test as we go on. But I'm sure you can all agree to that. It's pretty darn impossible.
Well, that's one of the easiest, the nice part is, one of the easiest processes in the diagnostic world is sending a message into a module and saying, give me the codes. So if you have 35 modules on the car, it's still pretty easy to write the code. You know, even if it's an aftermarket scan tool that's not targeted for the latest model now, you know, engineers and programmers can put the ability in, scan it, give me everything you can from every module, and then as the years go by, you layer in the effects. And I think that's one of the disadvantages of collision repair, is that the body systems are the things that get added later, right? You need to work on the engine, you need to reset the maintenance lights, you need ABS, you need airbag, you need the safety systems that are there. But then, you know, operating the windows, operating the door window motors, a variety of climate control systems, those things fall further down on the list and get added later as needed. Where the OE, they don't have a choice. They have those dealer technicians that have to work on every specific system immediately. And unfortunately, cars get into collision when they're brand new. So, you know, a collision shop is at a bit of a disadvantage because they really almost need the authentic tool immediately. But then again, they may not see that car in a collision for many years.
So that actually brings up a good follow-up question, and I'll open it up. So I don't know who might feel most comfortable answering it, but is there anything in J2534 that is available today? So the spec that's available today, is there anything in aftermarket tools that cannot yet get? So for any aftermarket tool, is J2534 coverage complete, or are there gaps? And if there are gaps, how do those gaps get addressed over time?
I think that really, and the same issue exists even with an OEM tool. In dealerships, there's certain things with tools that have gaps, and it comes back to assessing the vehicle and validating the repair on the vehicle. So it's and these things need to be reported to OEMs. They need to be reported to the scan tool companies. It's kind of a bug list. And several of the OEMs even have published known bugs on their list. If you don't read the known bug list, you don't know that, you know, certain things are going to happen. So validating and being able to prove that, okay, this covered all these modules on this one car is, and if everything is clear, you really got to go through the QC process on that vehicle. You got to operate everything on that car and make sure that it works, because you can have issues that you did clear all the codes, you operated a couple of switches, you think the codes are clear. I got a document saying that it's clear, but one of the switches glitched for a moment and set a new code. Now you got appearances like, did the scan tool not clear it? Is it a glitch in the car? So it's really difficult to nail that down. And with the J2534 spec, it's and the specification on the Dash 2, with the exception of some of the older emulators and some of the old handheld scan tools, there are a couple of functions that are different from the older handheld scan tool, but they're pretty well documented, what those differences are, and it might be for a specific vehicle, not so much on the system. But that's really hard to nail down with the, like I said, validating, did the scan tool hit everything on the car. I think that goes to the QC process of validating that everything works.
Well, there's a simple way to look at it too. In J2534, if you always remember, the Dash 1 standard was for emissions-related programming only. So every car manufacturer at this point in time is compliant with emissions-related programming. And GM from the beginning said, well, it makes no sense for me to carve out things that we don't want to give to the aftermarket. We'll just give it to everyone. So if you have a J2534 box and the Dash 2 standard applies to protocols or languages that a car speaks that are non-emissions related. So they had to do a couple tweaks there. So GM, you can do anything with a J-box that a dealer tech can do. Chrysler, on the other hand, you can do all emissions related modules, but you cannot do any body module programming. That requires a factory scan tool. Now there is a good website you can go to. It's nastf.org. So that's the OEM one-stop for some of you might have heard that, but nastf.org is a place where you go and there's a reprogramming tab. Every car manufacturer is listed. You click on the button and it says, okay, what tools do you need? What's the requirements? What are you allowed to program with the J-box? And what requires the OE tool to which to program? So there is a very quick and easy spot to go to. And then if you have a question, that you think that there's an omission from the OE. They're not allowing you to do something. You click on another tab and you can send in a service information request that asks the OE, can you clarify this particular deficiency or discrepancy? And the OE is required to respond back.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a perfect place to go for those kind of things, if you suspect something in that area. But I think it's also important, especially for the people in collision, to understand the difference between calibrating and programming, and the -1 and the -2, and also with OBD2. Now, it's for years I've been talking about we need a new acronym, ACS, acronym confusion syndrome. So, but it's the OBD2 is referred to as a connector. Everybody uses it for everything. But OBD2 truly is emission-based stuff, and that's all it applies to. So if you got an OBD2 scanner, you're just going to get the emission stuff. You step up and you get what you pay for. So you really got to do your homework and understand what it is you're buying, how much the coverage is, the reputation of the company that's developing the stuff that they have, and are they going to stand behind it? Are they going to help you if you run into problems and you do have a concern? But now when you get, and calibrating for the most part is a scan tool function. The OEM scan tools have the calibration functions built in. Calibration processes are built into a large number of the aftermarket scan tools. But as you start going down, spending less money on them, then some of those calibration features start going away in the body systems and so on. Programming, on the other hand, is that is the -1 spec on the J2534, and that's the ability to replace a module, reprogram it, marry it to that car, and then you still have to switch over to the scan tool, clear the codes, and do the calibrations. So they're kind of in separate areas, but that's different. But programming is going to come in when a module is replaced. So that's not really something you're going to be doing during the repair process. Like I said, unless you put in a new airbag module or you replace a body control module. But that on with the Chrysler, with the -1, that and I've noticed as of late that the 2010, you get the entire suite of modules to program and reconfigure and reset the vehicle. Restore configuration function is there, that just like you see on the flight tab. So these things are marching forward and improving every day.
Excellent. So I'm not the car guy. You guys came up with a very cool and probably industry-changing statement just recently. The audience, this is a public service announcement. What was the announcement that you all made? And what does it mean to them?
Sure.
Why should they take notice of it if they haven't yet?
So we've been, like I said, we've been doing a lot of work around the collision repair diagnostic space. In addition to NASDAQ, also working closely with ETI, Equipment Tool Institute, to work with the aftermarket scan tool organizations to help them identify some of the calibration requirements that we have. But the tool that we announced this week is now available to RTS subscribers, our iCar Gold class facilities, Platinum individuals, everybody. You can search by make, model, and year, and it will tell you which options are available on that particular vehicle. So whether you won't be able to deal with your specific vehicle.
So the generic options.
The generic option that the vehicle's available. So Honda Civic, for example, they got adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist, lane departure warning, blind spot, cross traffic. So we list all those different systems that are available on the vehicle to help you then identify, okay, this vehicle may be equipped with this particular system. We'll indicate the cameras and or sensors that help drive that particular vehicle. So again, whether it's the camera in the windshield behind by the rear view mirror, whether it's your adaptive cruise control sensor in the grille or behind the bumper cover, indicating where those sensors are located, which cameras and or sensors facilitate that, and then indicating also, does it illuminate a mill if there's an issue with it? Because as we've talked about quite a bit, not all these systems are illuminating mills, so it's not just as simple as looking at the dash and the conversation being over. We're letting people know this system does or does not indicate a mill on the dash, letting people know whether or not a diagnostic trouble code is set with the system. So there may not always be trouble codes even, something like the rear backup cameras may not have trouble codes for some of those. So indicating whether or not a mill, a DTC is required, will be illuminated. And then for each of those cameras and sensors, The vehicle manufacturers are very specific with regard to the parameters that are going to necessitate some type of calibration, some type of aiming. So if you're taking the glass out of many of these vehicles, calibration is required. Even if the system isn't, no issue with the system, even if the camera's undamaged, if there's no codes beforehand, you take that glass out, you now need to aim that camera. That camera needs to know, it needs to be aimed properly. If it's driving on the road and looking for vehicles in front of it, and it's aimed up a millimeter or two or a few degrees too high, it may not see that vehicle. So we're letting people know the parameters that necessitate calibration for these advanced driver assist systems. Again, letting them know if a scan tool is required, and letting them know whether or not there's special tools and equipment required as well. And if the calibration isn't done, or is done improperly, well, that's set a BTC, and let people know.
And they can learn more at the ICAR website.
They can learn more at the ICAR website, icar.com/RTS. And right now, we've got about 85 to 90% coverage on the 2016 model years. We're going to have by the end of the year 100% coverage on the 2016 model years. And we'll start looking at 2017, and maybe we can start working backwards towards 2015 and 14 as well.
Excellent, Doug.
I just wanted to give recognition to the work that ICAR is doing and the speed at which they're moving. So, if anybody's wondering, how active is ICAR in this, they're committing tremendous resource to this subject to really help try to educate folks. I heard that word educate, throughout this week, and the need for it, and ICAR's done a fantastic job there. The other thing they did, which I think Jason touched on, is they're actually putting together a best practice process for this whole activity. And, things we haven't talked about today, like battery support, is an important aspect of this. Cars are designed to start shutting down systems to protect them, and oftentimes we'll be in a process of diagnosing a vehicle, and we'll see the power of that vehicle start to tail off. And shops will try to trick us and say, oh yeah, there's battery support to it. We're smart enough now, we figured out whether they do it or they don't. And that simple step can make the difference between spending time needlessly worrying about systems you don't see and spending time on those that are working. And the road test was another aspect where it may have been missed in some of the OE position statements, but it is a critical step. And it's so critical that we've taken extraordinary measures to actually, in some instances, put our techs inside of the larger repair organizations to really make sure that step's actually followed through on. So even though in our case you don't have to have a highly trained technician at the other end, you need somebody that's going to follow through and actually perform the rate output test and then ultimately take it to that road test. So I applaud ICAR for actually bringing more clarity or substance or meaning to this subject, because it's not just about reading trouble codes or reflashing drives, it's about an entire process and where that fits in from the blueprinting all the way through to the delivery. So great job.
We appreciate that very much, and all your support and help that you've been helping us with as well. With regard to the road test aspect of it not being part of the position statements, while it may not be there, it is part of that calibration step. So it's going to be specific as far as the parameters for some of these calibrations. If it has to be, middle of the day, no rain, no clouds, so the cameras can see the lines on the road. Some of them are 10 minutes at minimum 40 miles per hour. So those calibration procedures will have that that drive requirement in there. So while it may not be in the position statement, you will find it when you're going through the calibration procedures and the process.
Yeah, and I agree. And the other part, that's a great piece with service information that's really coming together, and it's also available in you've got it all in one place, easy to find and look up, and that's a great thing. But the other important part is a scan tool is not going to tell you, like you take a seat in and out of a car, it's part of the service procedure to recalibrate that seat. The scan tool's not going to tell you, hey, the seat came in and out of the car, you need to calibrate it. So you've got to use those tools for the calibration procedures to know that they get done. So if you have a technician in your shop and say, hey, scan this car, clear this car, and you don't tell him the seat's come out, he doesn't know to calibrate the seat. Same way with the mobile tech, if you take it to a dealer, so that you got to really keep on top of the service information with this whole process.
So that brings up a really good question, which I'll open it and let you each respond to it as you see fit. The question is in general, do aftermarket scan tools have access to the black box that is in cars of recent years? So does an aftermarket scan tool have access to be able to pull information off the black box?
No. Nope, I've looked in that extensively. Now, an aftermarket scan tool can't look like, an OEM scan tool doesn't go from the black box. That's crash data retrieval, CDR, or event data recorder.
So even an OE tool cannot go in, or can?
No, if I get, it's not an OE scan tool that's designed for diagnosing a car. That's a whole different area of recreating an accident event. You need different software, different kind of tool to access that.
It's a special device, and you can get certified to
Yep.
to be a collision data recording or extracting expert. And, you know, there's a whole process on how that data should be used. So,
And
it's
are there
pretty
aftermarket
significant.
tools for that?
Oh, yes. Yes. But there's a process where
So it's not
you
the
have to
scan
fill out a
tool.
form. And it's sort of like doing keys. You know, if you want to do keys, there's a vehicle security process where your shop can be licensed to perform the calibration or learning of the keys, but it requires some extra steps and some background investigations and things. But it's open. It's just an extra step that you add on to the service that you want to perform.
Right.
Now, for the audience, because the person who asked the question, do any of you offer tooling that does access the black box? Not the scan tools, but tooling, aftermarket tooling that does access black box or allows them to access black box?
Bosch does have a collision data recording device. So we call it CDR. It is available.
How about Snap-on? How about STEC?
Yeah, we're not too good.
How about?
No.
Okay. All right. So for the person who asked that question, if you do want to follow up, I'd ask you to see Bob here afterwards. This question it's an interesting question. I'm not sure how best to ask it. So let me kind of walk through it. There's a construct, there's a belief. The question underpins a belief that a tool is a once and done purchase, has a life cycle, and then the tool becomes out of date, needs to be updated, either a new purchase or a new update of something. So the question is, what's the frequency where tools have to be updated? You know, is it every week, every month, every year? Is it, and I know you guys are talking about software updates, but I think they're generally talking about both the hardware components, right, the J boxing components, and then all the others. Can you guys speak to frequency of update what does someone up there going to get themselves into when they walk down the path with you? Well, why don't we start with you, Jay?
So basically, with us, you buy the tool and then the software gets updated every 6 months, like I said before. We generally support tools well long past when we stop manufacturing them. I mean, we're just stopping on our Solus Pro tool on our next update, and that's been out for, I don't know, at least 10 years. And we stopped making it probably 5 years ago. So we're still updating it even past then. And it's just the fact that the software is too big to fit on the tool at this point, that the software package is so large. So we can't even, the tool won't run anymore after that. So that's that point. We're programming it pretty much 24 hours a day, 5 days a week. I guess we give them weekends, right? But, programming it constantly, and then we just package it together and put it up. So maybe feasibly down the road, it could get updated, once a month, once a week, but we just like to put in a whole package. And then when it comes to like the J box, like we have a J, just about everybody has a J box, right? For the J2534, and that's going to be, like we've all said, it's from the manufacturer's software. So as long as the hardware box is updatable and you can change the firmware and whatnot, then that's, I'm sure at some point it would be out of date, but you would get a lot of longevity out of that as well, I would think. So.
Well, I think the philosophy is really driven by your individual needs in the shop. And I mean, one of the things that I've always believed and we've taught for many years, I would show up at a shop and they say, well, what's the next scan tool I should buy? And I said, well, I don't know. I don't know what your pain is. I don't know what the deficiencies are in your shop. I can make some guesses, but here's my recommendation. How many shop owners are in here? Collision Repair Center owners, how many hands? So we can see a few hands. So here's your homework assignment. All you need to do is grab a yellow legal notepad and a pen. You don't need anything complicated. You need to go back to your shop and you need to start writing down the things that you knew that you had to send somewhere else, that you had to bring a mobile technician in to be repaired. You had to do these things in order to solve these problems. You should always have a notepad that tells you what you cannot do today, right? Because that's going to drive your purchases for the future. And you start developing this list. And some of you, if you really want to do your homework, can sit down with your technicians stoke their memories and go backwards in time and saying, you know what, we've needed to perform this reset, and every time we have to send the vehicle someplace else. So now you know there's a specific feature you need. So now you're armed with the right information. The next time a scan tool salesman shows up at your shop and says, we got the latest, greatest thing ever. Okay, here's my list. How many of these things on this list can you solve? And if it's one of your number one things that you have to do, then say, okay, I'm going to bring one of those cars in. And I want you to bring a competent person that can show me the tool can do it. Now you have a true way to determine whether or not you're correcting deficiencies. I have a 73 Plymouth Duster with a 440 in it. You know what? That old Sunscope still works really good on that, right? I still have my old red brick, right? On my 1988 Dodge Dynasty for my aunt, it works great, right? But on a 2017 Dodge Charger, it's not going to work, right? So it's driven by changes that occur. The tool didn't become obsolete. It still does what it does. But the technology's moved in such a way that I have to upgrade and move on down the line. And I've always said, even with our company, and I've been transparent with our customers to say, if we can't do it, point at me and say, hey, look at my list. You told me you could do it, it doesn't. All right, now I'm armed with the right information, take it back to the engineers and say, here's the list, guys. You know, if you don't fix it, the competitors will, and they'll move on to somebody else. It's a simple philosophy, right?
I have that same philosophy too. If there's something that doesn't work and you need it to work and it didn't do what you wanted it to do, let one of us know, because if we don't know, we need to fix it, right? So,
And the same holds true, you know, NASDAQ.org. If someone ever tells you that you can't have it because the OE, it's proprietary or whatever, don't take their word for it. Go in there and click on that service information request and prove them wrong. Because I'm pretty sure that everything that somebody thinks they can't have, the myths of the industry, most of those have been debunked. You just don't know it because you've kind of hidden behind the smoky glasses.
And with that service request too, they post the questions that have been asked before and the answers to those questions.
Absolutely.
Okay,
And there's a whole running, diatribe of questions, whether it's a key question or a particular reflash or a calibration, whatever the case may be, those are all listed there, and you can go back and kind of an FAQ, read back through, what are their experiences. But, they get very few information requests, but I can visit every shop in this city in the next 2 days, and they'll all tell me there's something they can't have. Well, you can't have it because probably you don't know, or you weren't willing to make the investment.
Doug, you wanted to jump in there?
I understand the basic question, which was, how much money am I going to have to spend, and then how much am I going to have to budget on an ongoing basis to just stay ahead of this thing. And it's one of the values that we bring, because, we get to see how frequently those OEM tools change, and they're deprecated a lot more frequently than what we heard our current Snap-on just described, and they're not as judicious about, respecting the investment that's been made to their customers. So those tools change a lot more often. And to keep up with that and to keep them operating is a challenge, and that's one of the things we actually address with our approach is, by delivering the service as opposed to the technology, we eliminate the need for folks to have to worry about what version they're on. And does this tool work this year, and do I have to regress to a different version of the OE tool for a previous year? So we handle it that way.
So we have I'm going to suspect that I will throw this question out, and I will ask Jason to answer just generically, given what you guys have released. It may be that you can't answer.
Okay.
So that's just a caveat. It may be that you can't answer. But the question that comes down to is, if we use your tool, if we use any of the tools, and we identify issues, should the tech follow the data flow graph that actually comes with the stated DTC, or should they just pull the module and try and replace it? Should they try and actually do troubleshooting, or are we at a point in time where we just pull and replace?
Well, I think one thing that we have to our advantage is split repairs, is we have the advantage of the vehicle's been in a collision. So oftentimes, if
Explain that.
so
I don't think anyone here thinks that's an advantage.
if I'm dealing with a vehicle that's been hit in the front and I can identify that's got adaptive cruise control on it, there's a pretty good chance that some of those codes are related to the module that's no longer there, the sensor that's now laying on the ground next to it. You don't want to just be throwing modules at it. That's not going to be the solution. But I think, again, identifying the capabilities of that vehicle, identifying the parts that are associated with that system, trying to determine Whether that code is likely related or unrelated to the collision is going to be an important step in the process as well, to have those conversations and manage that relationship with everybody that's involved in it, and understanding that, you know, this is an emissions code. This is not likely related to the collision. You know, how we address this versus, well, the adaptive cruise control, you know, with the system saying we've got umpteen codes for this one because, again, it's been involved in a collision. We know it's been involved in a collision. We can kind of focus our efforts in that area. So we call it the collision advantage.
I love that term, by the way.
That's great. All right, so this is an excellent question. We've been talking about, we use the word, you know, when you word the word mechanic, there was a definition of what a mechanic was, and there was an industry standard for what it meant to be a mechanic and to be able to actually work on a vehicle. And so now we're going to get into, and I think, you know, Doug, you said you don't necessarily need to have the most trained tech at that endpoint, which implied that there's a definition of trained tech. So the question from the audience is, what is a trained tech? What does it mean to be a trained tech? What are the certs available? And where is training available, whether it's from you guys as the tool makers or generically in the industry? How does the audience understand what it means to put forward a trained technician to actually be able to execute quality repair? And I'll ask you to start, because you actually used the word, but I mean, please jump in.
So, you know, there are standards out there. On the mechanical, we've chosen to use both ASC and factory certified training as the two metrics or benchmarks for us in our recruiting process. And so they are clearly identified. We view this as a mechanical operation, although, you know, clearly it's electrical in nature. And even within dealerships, I think this is part of the misnomer, is that, you know, not all dealerships have people that have specialized skills in diagnostics. Right. Many dealers are now going to where they have one technician in-house, it's just their role. And their role is to figure out what's wrong and hand it off to somebody else to repair it. So, you know, when you hear about factory trained, you know, you got to be more specific about that. Is it factory trained on transmissions, or is it factory trained on diagnostics? And so just keep that in mind, is that specialization as we go forward in whatever you do in business is going to become very, very important, whether it's the substrates, the powertrain systems, or in this case, the diagnostics.
Yeah. Advanced materials, I mean, everything. You need to always be learning. No matter what.
Right? Maybe live in interesting times. This is fascinating.
Yeah,
so we have about 5 minutes left, and we're standing between these fine folks and lunch and onward with the rest of the show. So what I'm going to do is offer the open stage here, closing comments, you know, key messages that you want to make sure that the audience understands as they go forward. Chuck, we'll start with you and then follow along.
Yeah, it's the whole thing to me is really about the process, bringing the diagnostic process in and using the tools that are available in the scan tools. And scanning is new to collision. It's been gradually getting in, but again, it's with the process. We've known in mechanical, we scan cars. It's just automatic. We don't even really think of it. And I've heard some comments as well. It's especially with the position statements, and I'm glad to see the position statements come out because it really raises awareness of what's going on. But at the same time, I don't want people to start addressing this, well, I'm doing it because the OEM says that I have to. I want you to really take advantage of what it is that you're going to learn so that the car gets done quicker, it gets done correctly on the first time, just like when you heard what the OEM guy saying, that we want to fix, the car's got to get fixed right first time. Not reworking vehicles, not waiting for customers to bring cars back, and just start embracing that strategy-based diagnostics on the vehicle.
Excellent. Jason?
Yeah, you know, it's with regard to the damage analysis process and the blueprinting process, it certainly is going to help with cycle time. It's going to help with making sure the vehicle repair plan is put together properly. And if you're not doing it, then you don't know what you're getting into, and that's where we're going to have delays at the back end. Similar to three-dimensional measuring, we can only take a full look at that vehicle by doing three-dimensional measuring on that vehicle. The only way we can look into all these advanced driver assist systems and restraint systems is to scan the vehicle. That's, you know, certainly if the airbags are put, we've got a pretty good hunch that we have an issue there. But aside from that, you're not going to be able to see a lot of these systems. You have to do that as part of that blueprinting. It's going to help us create accurate damage reports, access to the OEM information to make sure that you're, again, calibrating those systems properly. Because again, it's complete safe quality repairs. You want to make sure that those systems are functioning properly when we give the keys back to that customer.
Excellent. Doug?
Yeah. Just 2 points. I'm really excited about the future. I've been in the industry now 30 years. I've never seen a more interesting time, more exciting time for us as professionals. And just really exciting news in all this, which is that when you talk to car companies, you talk to insurance companies, you talk to repairs, there's one common element that runs throughout, which everybody wants a safe repair. There's no anti-safe movement, right? So you talk to insurance companies, they're in the business of protecting people and offering some degree of assurance on that. And so when you think about it, that's the rally point here. And I see it happening, and we meet with carriers all the time in all different situations. And I have to assure the repairs in the room, they are taking it seriously. They are looking at this. They do care. I think the challenge as repairs is, let's talk to those people within our repair associations and within our communities to see that our neighbors are taking the same approach. I believe insurers are going to get there faster than a lot of the repairs are going to get there. And that's troubling to me when a repair has to be told to go and do something. So as professionals, this is a plea, right? I mean, I spend my years on the collision side in more shops than I can remember. And I've got friends that still want to debate with me as to whether or not they should do it. And to me, it's just with all the information that's out there, with everything we know, there is no debate. Now it's just a matter of being responsible and being professional in doing it.
Thank you, Bob.
You know, it's a great time to be in this industry, right? I mean, I've been in it the majority of my life, but it's a great time to be in the industry. And I think the one thing that, I go back to the three-legged stool concept, right? If you're looking at an issue, whether it be technician, service information, or tools, you need to take control of that process. Don't overthink it, right? If you have an issue, if there's something you're not able to solve, or there's an issue, it comes back to those three things. Now, we could sit here and talk about, training requirements. We could talk about, what type of tools, but it's your individual decisions that make all the difference in the world. The resources are there, and this is one of the things I hear from the OEs on a regular basis. We built all these systems. We have the service information. The aftermarket tools are out there, but they're underutilized. Training, most training that's offered in the United States is underutilized. We have plenty of room for more butts in the seat. We're, encouraged to train everyone out there who's interested, but it takes an investment. And one of the things I look at is we want to call ourselves a professional society. We call them a technician rather than a mechanic. The point I want to make is, if you're sending your technician to training at night after he worked all day, and then he has to come back another day and work, and you send him for another night of training, what is he really absorbing during that time? Make the investment. What would he learn if he went to school fresh and went all day during the week, right? Not on his weekend, not on his Sunday. That's an investment. No different than as a shop owner, you invest in your time in becoming the best shop owner you can be. You got to make that investment. Some techs will leave, some techs will stay, but the point being is the resources are there. It's not the dark ages. The lights are out. You just have to go to them and pick.
Jason G,
Very
recognize what
good.
people are trying to
Excellent.
eat. Ready?
That definitely rings true. You definitely need that training, right? It's all about information. You want to make sure that you're checking it, testing it first, verifying the problem, verifying the repair. Information fixes cars.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, two service announcements. One, there is lunch available in the back. You are encouraged to please stay and interact with these gentlemen and the four OEAs that were here earlier. Number two is at 12:30, there's a phenomenal, fabulous, incredible, unbelievable, mind-bending and mind-altering session. And if that's not enough words for you, it's all about composites. You should be back in this room at 12:30 for that. And with that, please join me with a warm welcome to these five panelists.